Dan Bublitz Comedy Productions.
My friend Dan, he's got a podcast, 'cause all comics need a podcast, and nobody had a podcast called The Art of Bombing. So Dan went out and bought a tape deck. Who knows why he bought a tape deck? Podcasts don't get played on tape decks, but Dan is from the 80s. So hey there, all you funny jerks, come talk to Dan about your work. Tell him all about your worst times. It's The Art of Bombing. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Art of Bombing podcast. It is me, your host, Dan Bublitz Jr., and with me, as always, is my co-producer, co-host, Mr. Josh Shirley. How you doing, Josh?
Fantastic, Dan-tastic.
Oh, Dan-tastic. I like that. Oh,
dude, Dan-tastic. That's your, I think, folks from now on, Dan-tastic. All right, it's
how you feeling? You say Dan-tastic.
Fantastic. Just make it a thing out there. All right,
it's like
you heard it here first.
It's like damn fantastic, but it's it's Dan-tastic.
So that's your comedy name. I'm seeing a lot of comedy names. You know, like Casey Famous. Like that's not your last
okay.
name.
So
like,
now
it's like Strauberg or so whatever. And
so it's Dan-tastic.
Dan-tastic. That is.
Oh, just Dan-tastic.
Dan-tastic. If we do a show together and that's not your name, we're gonna have some words, or.
Well, I have some strong feelings and opinions about silly stage names, so I don't know that I can do that, but right. Outside of comedy, I'll take it.
Good. Well, who do we got this week?
This week we had a great episode. We had a newer comic, only been doing comedy for a handful of years. This week our guest is Aneas Herrera, a comic that lives kind of not quite in my town, but close. I mean, he lives in Johnstown. I live in Loveland. We're pretty much the same town. It's weird logistics that we don't need to get into, but pretty much lives in my area. And I see him in Northern Colorado doing comedy all the time. And and it was a great episode. We had a great conversation. He's been because not only is he doing comedy, he's getting really big into trying to do sketch. And he, for a newer comic, he's really, seems like he kind of has his head on his shoulders straight, where he's building a team to be able to succeed, and we talk a little more about that. We talk about that in the episode. But we also talked about, open mics, because he had an incredible story of his bombing story was at an open mic, and it was pretty incredible. I think it's the first time anybody has had this happen to him, or at least told this story on the Art of Bombing. So that was new. Yeah, it was a unique one. I always like that, because I always worry, and when I do because we do a lot of pre-screening for guests and things like that. This isn't just anybody's on. I mean, we're open to new comics. We're open to having legends, so on and so forth. But I do a little bit of pre-screening, and a lot of that is because I'm trying to cut down on the amount of comics that are on that their story is just from an open mic, simply because, not that it's not bombing, but as we've progressed, we've kind of come to the conclusion that that's what open mics are for. That's where you're supposed to be bombing. And the more entertaining stories come from shows. But this one it lived up to the being entertaining and unique. Yeah. So it was a little different.
Great story. Let's get in it.
Yeah, it was great. And then we, on this week's callbacks that's coming up on Thursday, we're going to talk about more don'ts than do's, but we talk about if it's your very first time and you're thinking about doing an open mic, or maybe you've already done an open mic, but we're giving some tips on how to make that experience a little bit better for you. And if you're a host, some things that you can do to help those new people. So that's what's coming up this week on the callbacks. We've got little touch on comedy classes as well. So there's a lot of great information. So make sure you tune into that on Thursday. If you're not already, make sure you subscribe, follow the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. We're on all the major platforms, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, you name it, we're there. Make sure you're subscribing. Show us some love. Join the Facebook group, the Art of Bombing Bomb Squad Facebook group. We're trying to, get some engagement there. Get people talking about bombing, talking about comedy, getting better at comedy. Do those things. And finally, the last thing we'll promote is if you haven't already, go over to YouTube. All the links for all the stuff that I'm talking about are in the show notes. So it's convenient right there for you. But go to the show notes, follow the links. But right now, go over to YouTube and subscribe over to YouTube because we are putting these episodes out as videos now. So you could be, as I say that, you could be watching this video right now. Maybe you are, I don't know. But that's what we're doing. So we're putting out, audio, video, the whole 9 yards. We're becoming a grown-up podcast, and we could use your support.
And we also need that one last yard.
Exactly. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this week's intro. Let's get into this episode with Aneas Herrera. Here's our conversation with Aneas. Enjoy.
It's the art of bombing. So you started running your own show over in Johnstown in the last couple months. How's that been going? It looks like it's been going pretty good.
It's been a weird experience because I am very new at this comedy thing, and I'm 23, trying to be a comedian. I don't have deep pockets at all, so I can't really pay for the comedians to be there. So luckily, it's a lot of just the local guys being like, I'll do 10 minutes.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. So it's just, do you try to collect tips or something
we
like
did that last time.
Okay, cool. So it's just kind of fun. And you're doing it in your garage, is that correct?
Yes.
Oh, that's I love the concept of a good old garage show. It reminds me of punk rock. Very punk rock comedy.
Yeah, and my buddy's dad made us a stage. Just hand built
cool.
it. So yeah, it's very nice to actually, it feels like a comedy club at least.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, the more you can put into it to make it feel that way, the better. I recorded my album in my basement, but
awesome.
You wouldn't have known because I set it up so it was like a comedy club and did all the things, had a stage, curtains, chairs.
Nice.
It was pretty good. Yeah. So you can take those different locations and make them feel like a good comedy room if you put the time and work into it. So
yeah, and I don't know, luckily I'm so new in this, I haven't burned a lot of bridges, so people have been saying yes.
Well, that's good. That's good. That's a good sign. Yeah. How new are you?
I started 4 years ago with writing, and then did mics here and there, but then COVID happened.
Yeah.
And
Put a damper on everything.
Because I tried one of those Zoom mics, but I was just so green. Didn't work. Didn't even have stage presence.
Yeah.
Sitting in front of my webcam. So.
Yeah, the whole Zoom shows, they were their own animal for sure. I'm glad that they're over.
Yeah,
for sure. But well, no, that's cool that the shows have been going. How many have you done in your garage so far?
The 26th will be the third one.
The third one. That's awesome.
I only wanted to do one, but a couple of the local comics said you should do another one, and then they said it again. And then this one, it's kind of we're throwing it like a birthday celebration, so we should have that room pretty packed.
Awesome. Is who's the birthday for? Is it for you?
Yeah, it's for me.
Oh yeah, you're just throwing your own birthday comedy show. Yeah. Hey, that's a good way to get people to come to a show, though.
Oh yeah.
Use the birthday card. Use all the cards when it comes to getting people at a show.
And honestly, I tried to get a venue for October, but their liquor license just stopped, or I guess they didn't renew it, so they just had to close down.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think I know what venue you're talking about,
Yeah.
and it's wild because I was just talking to somebody about them, and how I made a comment about how I was like, I noticed they haven't been promoting anything. What happened to them? And then somebody told me what happened, and I was like, oh, well, that explains it.
And it's a shame because that's a beautiful stage.
I didn't get a chance to get over there. I hadn't been over there yet, but
yeah, It was really awesome.
Yeah, that's always unfortunate when we lose a venue that wants to do live entertainment. Any venue for that matter that wants to do live entertainment always sucks, but even more so if it's got a beautiful stage and setup.
Yeah, it was really cool because they would have just smoke that would come out, and I don't know, it was just professional for like an open mic.
They had smoke
Yeah,
and everything.
Yeah.
Huh? Wow.
I was never on the showcases, but for the open mic, they went all out, and it was really cool.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm bummed now that I didn't get to see that. That would have been fun. It's like wrestling open mic. You're practicing wrestling intros. Got the smoke and everything. I like it. Do you have any goals with your show? I mean, you said you were just going to do one and then it, led to another and now it's leading to a third. Is this something you think you're going to try to do on a regular basis?
I want a venue eventually because the format of the show is very weird. It's just comics come up, do 10 minutes. If they want to go early, they can leave early. If they want to run the mic, they can run the mic. But then, since it's my garage, I go up last.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's a little egotistical or not, but
I would think because it's your garage, you'd be hosting the show.
I hate hosting.
Do you have somebody else host then?
Yeah,
Okay,
I have some of my sketch comedy buddies will host for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna talk about that too because I saw today. Yeah, I saw some of your social media posts that you've been doing some sketch comedy. How's that going?
Oh, it's hard.
Oh
it is
yeah,
tough.
I'm sure. Yeah.
The writing's fun, easy. I get to be witty on paper. Writing for other voices, though, I found that to be challenging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting trying to write for other people. Because if you don't know, unless you know them well, or you already have like a chemistry with those people, it's definitely more challenging to figure out their voice. I've been in did a few sketches. Haven't really been in a sketch group. So are you guys like working on having your own sketch group where it's a core group of people, or just kind of randomly doing stuff here and there?
Luckily, it is a sketch group, and everyone that's a part of it brings something to the table. My buddy Cole, he's a great editor, and he's a photographer by trade, so it helps that with cinematography and all that. And then, I don't know, some of them are just coworkers. We're all around 21 to 24, so what else are we going to do?
Yeah, that's how it starts. Yeah. I mean, you got to start somewhere. Some of the greatest sketch groups, that's probably how they started. They were just like, hey, we ain't got nothing better to do. Let's go make some comedy videos and see what happens. So it's a good starting point, and it's another way to build comedy chops. With stand up, you're using other tools that can be applied to stand up. The writing and performing and all of those things help performer get better at performing.
Oh, for sure. And there's been a couple jokes where I've written, I'm like, I want to take that to stage as well. So, yeah.
So are you guys just hoping to just do video stuff, or have you thought about doing a live sketch show?
I would really like, if I do get a venue eventually, I would like, if they're comfortable with it, to do open up with a live sketch and then do stand up. But I don't know if you can do stand up after sketch. I have no idea. I think
you can. Yeah, you can. I've been on shows where it was a mix of sketch, improv, and stand up, and it wasn't all like like they would do a couple sketches, because there used to be a show. Well, it's Rise Theater now, but it used to be, I forget the name of it, what it was before, but it was a different name before. And when it was the other theater, there was a comic, and I don't even know if that comic's still around, but they had a show with some other some of their improv buds and sketch buds. Awesome. And that's what it was. It was a mix. They would have a stand up, and they would do video sketches, they would do live sketches, they would do improv, and then have comedians on there. And it was a fun show. It worked well. I think it really just depends on the venue.
That's fair.
I mean, realistically, if you're in a bar, like a sports bar or something, sketch show probably ain't gonna work.
Yeah, that's fair.
But who knows? I could be totally wrong. You don't know until you try. Gotta try that stuff out.
And the cool thing about the sketch thing is, fortunately, everyone I've asked, even some of them took a little longer to turn around to it, but they're all 100% in, dedicated. We spent all day. We woke up at 9, did a table read, bought them all donuts. Then we did headshots and like a photo for the sketch group. And then we had one of my buddy's friends has a food truck, so he catered for us for free.
Oh,
that was pretty cool. Way more professional than it needed to be. and then we got 4 hours of shooting done.
How does one join this sketch group? It's like, where do we sign up? Where are the auditions? Open auditions to come get some of this stuff. The donuts and catering. You got craft services.
Yeah, I made it very clear that will not be happening next time.
It's kind of an oddity of it happening.
Yeah, just the dates, I guess, aligned.
It's like, don't expect this every time.
Actually, one of you bring the donuts.
Yeah, right. It's somebody else's turn. We're gonna put this. Treats are gonna be on rotating. It's gonna be like when we were in grade school. Every Friday, somebody else has to bring the cupcakes.
Or like a sports team.
Yep, exactly. Got to take turns with that. Well, that's awesome though that you found a group of people that are, passionate about it and in other ways. Because I feel like you have to, I feel like what happens with a lot of groups is that everybody wants to be the star and they don't have any, the people behind the camera, same thing. They want to be in front of the camera, and then you have the egos and everything clashes. And if you have people that are dedicated to that part, the technical side, and then the people dedicated to the performing and all that, you're definitely on a path for better success.
Yeah, and it just really worked out because there's one guy in the group that doesn't want to be on camera, doesn't want to be mentioned or anything. He just wants to write, he just wants to direct, and he wants to get it done.
That's
so it's
great.
super cool.
So do you guys have any plans for what you're going to do? Like if you film a sketch, you're just going to throw it on YouTube? Or are you hoping to maybe if you do a live show, you can show it at a live show? Or have you...
We definitely want to put it on YouTube just to build something, just to have something out there. Because the buddy, the guy I'm going to mention by name is Ron Millman. He's a Boulder comic.
Okay.
And he's the only other comedian I asked to join me on this because I realized... you don't just need stand-up guys. You need people who can act, who have theater backgrounds. Like I said, editors.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I tried acting. Oof.
Yeah,
I was dead.
I feel your pain. I've done some. I've been in some like regional commercials and a few other things, and I'm just like, I always feel like I was like so bad at it. I'm like, I don't even know how I got this part.
And then when you mess up the take, you're like, oh, I let everyone else down. We got to do it again. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely can be a lot of pressure. But it's good, like you said, that you realize that right away, that you need to have different backgrounds and, to be successful. Because you really do. If you just depend on, unless it's just you being the star of everything and filming with your camera, that's one thing. But, if you're trying to be, collective.
Because I really do like traditional sketch comedy, like SNL and Key and Peele and Dave Chappelle show. Like, I like all of that.
Yeah,
and I know the big thing on TikTok are the skits with you and your face and stuff, and I just wanted to go back to original sketch comedy. Yeah.
It's funny because when I was younger, when I was in high school, I was more attracted to sketch comedy than stand up. So then the fact that I got into stand up is kind of wild because I was more, like I said, I love sketch comedy. Kids in the Hall, one of my favorite sketch groups, one of my favorite shows. Just love it.
I don't even think I've heard of that.
What? You've never heard of Kids in the Hall?
No.
Oh my God, you are a baby.
I'm sorry. I just turned 23.
It's funny. They actually just so there's I forget the name of the documentary, but a documentary just came out last year about them, and then they did a new season that of their show that came out on Amazon. So they were a sketch show. I think they were on HBO back in the day, but they're a Canadian group.
Okay.
I'm sure you know who Dave Foley is.
Yes.
He's an actor.
Yes.
Okay, so he's one of the kids in the hall. Like he was part of this group, and then there's like 4 other members.
Was this like the 90s? Or?
Yeah, early 90s. Their show came out. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And then they all pretty much went on to have successful careers in acting and improv and all that stuff.
Did any of them become a stand-up?
Well, some of them do dabble a little bit in stand-up.
Gotcha.
Like, I know Kevin McDonald, he doesn't do traditional stand-up, but he does, like, where he'll tell stories about the time with Kids in the Hall and stuff like that.
Oh,
so
nice.
more like storytelling stuff, but does it as, kind of a stand-up show. But it's not necessarily set up punch, that kind of thing. But, yeah. So, I mean, they've definitely done, outside of like Saturday Night Live and SCTV, I feel like they were probably one of the first like real they were definitely a groundbreaking indie sketch group.
Okay.
That would be they weren't like on, when they first started, they weren't on, major television, and then they eventually got on TV, and their show was pretty successful.
Awesome.
And I think there's, I don't know, 5 or 6 seasons or something like that. I don't know, maybe even more. I don't remember. The 90s was a long time ago.
I didn't even get to see the 90s. No.
You just that's how old I am. I'm like, I was in high school in the 90s.
It's a pretty cool time to be in high school.
Yes. It was a lot of cool things happening. But yeah, if you're really a fan of sketch, I would go look up Kids in the Hall and check out some of their stuff, because they have some pretty iconic sketches, And then The Whitest Kids You Know is another group that they had a show on IFC, and that was pretty popular. I think it was like 3 or 4 seasons, and that's another another great sketch group, more indie punk rock type of sketch.
Gotcha.
So. Good stuff. Do you guys have a name for your group yet, or still deciding? Or because I feel like you probably you should. You're already doing marketing, taking headshots, taking group photos.
Our name is Comedy Crew Productions, or the CCP.
The CCP. Okay.
Chinese Communist Party. That was kind of our little joke there, and we're just like, it's simple. It's on the name, and there's a joke in it, so we're doing it.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. Perfect. Awesome. And then you're gonna, like you said, eventually you're gonna put that. Are you gonna create a channel just from that with that name, or maybe
we have the name, we have the channel, we have everything. We actually do a podcast too. We did 1 episode of it, but the podcast is only about us talking about filming that sketch.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So you're filming a sketch, and then you're doing like a podcast talking about filming a sketch.
I'm talking about we'll have the writers' room guys first, then we'll have the actors come on, and then we'll have the editors.
Oh, that's cool. That's a really great concept for.
Thank you.
You're like thinking ahead on all your marketing.
Thank you.
Already
all this time.
Yeah, hey, that's good. That's a good way to spend your time. There's a lot of worse things you could be doing with your time than creating content and your branding.
That's fair.
Because you're getting ahead of other people make podcasts about the making of shows. Now you're taking care of it yourself. Nobody can move in on your territory.
Yeah, I don't know, because I always want to do a podcast. It seemed cool, and I was like, there's so many out there. Let's do something around this.
Yeah. No, that's great, because that's also because it works well with having something that's complementary to what you're already doing. You have it so it's a companion, because then it if somebody discovers the podcast, then hopefully they're like, oh, this is cool. Now I'm gonna go watch the sketch, and if people are watching the sketches, they're going to want to watch the podcast because or listen to the podcast because it's kind of behind the scenes, talking behind the scenes of the sketch that they just watched.
And another thing I learned early on when I was trying to learn how to put the group together, start writing sketches, is there's not a lot of information about that out there. Like, there are a couple SNL guys that give their testimonies, but other than that, you got to just do it.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, with this podcast, maybe I can help the next person. Maybe just get a bit of information before they start.
Yep, absolutely. That makes sense. No, and that's great. Always, because then again with that, you're contributing to, you're adding value to entertainment as a whole, which can never go wrong with that. But now let's talk about bombing. That's what we're here to. We could talk about your sketch group all day long, and just have this be one big promo for the CCP. But
thank you.
But we gotta talk a little bit about bombing. That's what we're here for. So I'd love to hear your story from a time you bombed.
So I'm going to say 2. And I know one of them is an open mic, but the other one will be a showcase. But the first one I really want to talk about is before the Comedy Fort was there, it was Hodie's Half Note. And it was the first time I was going out of Loveland to do a show. Because I did one back in the Rialto at these open mics.
The Rialto had open mics? Really?
But it was more for like poets and music performers.
Still, the fact that they had an open, I'm surprised.
Yeah, that venue. It was the upstairs part of the Rialto, but it was still cool.
Yeah, I haven't been in there. I need to go take a tour of that place.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't been in there for anything, but no, that's cool that they did an open mic. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, and then I went to Hodie's Half Note, and then I still recognize some people who are in the scene now. I'm glad they don't recognize me, but I went on stage, and I just didn't say a single word for about a minute until the host came and took the mic from me.
So you didn't even really bomb. You froze. Like, I don't even know that's a bomb. You didn't even say
There's a couple us. and
Wow.
ahs. Yeah, but yeah, that was a rough one.
So your first experience was just totally going into shell shock and freezing up to the point that the host was just like, "Oh, he needs to be rescued."
And I did the rookie mistake of inviting a friend of mine to that open mic, and it was just, ugh.
At least it was only one friend.
Yes.
At least
yes.
you didn't invite like a whole bunch of people, because that would have been traumatic. You probably wouldn't be sitting here now.
No,
you would
probably
have
not.
quit completely.
And I'm lucky that friend did end up going to my first garage show, and it was a good time, and he enjoyed it, and he got to see me improve. Sorry.
That's good. That's great.
Yeah.
It's always nice when you can have a little bit of redemption. Always makes one feel better about themselves. Now I'm curious with that. So you froze. Did you just stage fright?
It had to be.
You just
And also,
do you really remember? I mean, obviously you remember it happening, but like.
It was the first time. So when I did the Rialto shows, there was a stool, and I just sat on the stool the whole time. I wasn't even standing up for comedy.
Okay.
And then this one, there was no stool, and I was standing, and I don't know. It was the first time following a comedian as well.
Yep.
And it was just, I don't know, it threw me off my game completely.
Okay. So there was a couple of variables that you weren't quite expecting
Mm-hmm.
that basically put you out of your comfort zone. You
For
got
sure.
comfortable sitting and doing things a certain way, and then those things weren't there.
Yeah, it's easier to follow a poet than it is a comedian that...
Yeah, it's amazing, especially if the poet is doing sad poetry, because then people really want to laugh after that. Really helps break that tension.
Yeah, I look back on those shows, it's like, oh, I wish I could have just roasted those guys before me.
And then after one time, they would have been like, okay, you can't come to this open mic no more. Be like, you're done. Save it for somewhere else. So when you went up, when they called you up for that open mic, they called your name, the host introduced you, you just went up and just stared into the audience and just
the complete stare.
just didn't know. Wow. I don't think I've never experienced anything quite like. I mean, I've frozen up, but not right out of the gate to the point where I had to be rescued. I mean, for that being like a story about an open mic, that's still pretty incredible, because I don't know too many people where that's happened.
And they still do comedy.
and they didn't quit. Exactly. It's amazing to me though that it was a good host, obviously, if they came and rescued you, because I feel like some hosts would have just waited. They would have just let it go and get worse.
Luckily,
or luckily they were paying attention. I guess that's really what it is.
it's because I was the final comic up, so I think it was like, let's get out of here. Let's go get beers.
Okay, well, still, that's so you were the final comedian even.
Yep, and Hody's, since I was underage at the time, Hody's had a giant X on my hands, and I probably looked 16, and now it was just a problem.
Did you ever go back to that open mic after that?
Luckily, COVID happened, and then it became the Comedy Fort.
Yeah.
And I really started trying. I was like, okay, I'm going to do stand-up. I'm actually going to work on it. I'm going to practice in the mirror and all that stuff. And it worked out, luckily.
Yeah, because you're doing it now. Getting up more.
Got invited to Jokechella this year. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a good time.
Oh, yeah.
That was a fun experience. I wanted to do it last year, but it didn't work out for me. I was booked somewhere else, but got to do it this year, and I had a good time. It's a fun, not an official comedy festival.
And I still got a badge.
Right?
It was awesome. I'm like, my first
fancy.
badge.
How'd you feel about your set over on that weekend?
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah.
Oh, it was awesome.
Yeah. I think everybody probably did well. That was a fun.
Just the energy in the room was crazy, and the comics were actually all happy to be there. No one was in, because I did the Fort's Funniest too, and everyone was just, oh no,
yeah,
and then this one's just, we're all drinking, having a good time.
Yep, we're just there to party and tell jokes. Yeah, competitions definitely put a different psychology and mindset on people's brains when it comes to that, where you're competitors and not colleagues. Everybody for themselves.
Yeah, this is just. And then the other bomb I want to talk about, the actual venue bomb. It was probably my second time I was paid to do comedy. And it was in Longmont at a brewery show. It was my first brewery show, too. So I've only done the open mics, the Comedy Fort, and then the other one I did David's class, so I got to perform the main stage once there too, and it was just eesh.
So you took a comedy class?
Yeah, I took the Comedy Force comedy class this year.
Cool.
Met
Awesome.
David, and yeah,
Awesome.
it was really cool.
Is that who teaches it?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
David himself teaches it.
Oh, that's
pretty cool. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was just.
I knew that I've seen them advertise now and again that they have a comedy class, but I didn't think too much of it. But as far as
I definitely took it just to meet
cool.
people and get into the scene.
Well, that is definitely a good way to do it, especially in a scene, this size.
Oh yeah.
Because it's a lot easier to meet people that way. And when you take classes like that, if other people who take the class continue on, you kind of build your class of comedians. People
for sure.
that you get to come up with.
So far, there's only 2 of us, but
Hey, but
that continued.
That's 2 more than a lot of classes. I mean,
That's fair.
It's amazing how many people will take a comedy class and then after the class they're like, "Yeah, not for me," and don't. But then
sure.
mean, people take classes for different reasons. Some people it's just for confidence. It's
And
not that
bucket list.
bucket list, and build confidence. They don't really have a, they don't really want to pursue stand up or whatever. It's just more about building that confidence. So, but no, are you friends with the person then?
Oh yeah, he's done my garage show. And he's gonna do it again this
Cool.
month. So it's been awesome. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So you took you did took the class to the main stage and then this brewery.
Yeah, and then the brewery, and the first time, because it was the first time children were front row in the audience, and
I'm laughing because I've seen children in an audience derail a lot of comedians.
because I was just my jokes are not child friendly, and then I remember another Fort Collins guy said, "Screw it, you gotta do your job," and then he went up as vulgar as he could possibly be, and I was like, "Oh, okay," and then I bombed.
How'd they do though? How'd the other comedian do?
Oh, he fantastic.
Oh,
That guy's a killer though. Joe Frommer.
Oh yeah, I knew.
Yeah, I like to call him car salesman because he's hey, good to be here. He's all high energy and he's hard to follow though. That's what I will say. He is hard to follow. When he did my garage show, I purposely put him 1 before me because I was like, 2 before me because I did not want to follow Joe in my own garage.
That's funny.
Very good guy though.
Oh yeah,
very good guy.
absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting because my co-producer actually was there, and this was before he was producing my pod. This is like one of the first times we met in person, but we were doing a show together in Kansas City because that's where he lives, and I was doing a show with another buddy and one of his comedy pals or whatever, and anyway. Right before the show was getting ready to start, a whole family walked because it was a restaurant. A whole family with a bunch of kids walked in, and they all pretty much panicked. And I was like, "Yeah, whatever. I do clean. I'm pretty much clean all the time anyway." So I'm like, "Yeah, whatever." This ain't the first time I performed in front of kids, but it was just so funny because they all pretty much panicked. I think my co-producer, he didn't, at the time, like I said, it wasn't my co-producer, and I don't think he panicked as much, but we still talk about how funny that was because you could just hear the reaction of, you could just see the faces when the kids came in. Their faces were just like, "Oh no."
That's honestly funny because you guys were all there before the kids came.
Yeah, because we were waiting. The show hadn't quite started. It was, for one, this particular show, there wasn't really anybody there. It was maybe a couple people were there for the show. Okay. And so we were just kind of, I can't remember. I know we started late, but I can't remember if we were still waiting, hoping people would show up when they walked in. But yeah, so it was, right before the show started. So we were all like already, "Oh man, is this show even going to happen?" That kind of thing. And then that family came in and were like, "Well, the show's going to happen," but they all panicked. And like I said, it's just funny to see that reaction from people. And I've always found that when there's children in the audience, obviously you got to be careful kind of what you say, but at the same time, if a parent's bringing their kid to a comedy show, they have to know that they're going to be subject to having language used and different kinds of content. And I've also found that a lot of times kids aren't paying attention to the show anyway. They're just like sitting there trying to wishing they could go run around and be a kid.
The funny thing is that's exactly what those kids were doing. They were just running, almost tripping over the mic cord, and it was just
That does not surprise me. I've definitely been I've had kids run circles around me as I was performing at certain private shows that I've done.
Like, please take your kids out here, or at least put leashes on them. No,
Yeah, right. At least make them sit down. They don't have to pay attention, but I would like it if they were not running circles around me right now. It's distracting. Yeah, I had that happen. I was performing at a fundraiser, and it was like in this auditorium, kind of, like ballroom auditorium type thing, typical event center space, like hotel events, but where there's like a dance floor and the bar, and then there's seating and all this stuff. But I was performing for this benefit, and there was just kids just running around me as I'm trying to perform. Oh, it was pretty hilarious. It was basically, and then I tried to make a joke about having my own orbit, that I like sucked them in to my gravitational pull,
and then you were canceled.
yeah. Well, I mean, the audience was like, I don't get it. They didn't find it nearly as funny as I did, but good times, that's for sure. The corporate comedy leads to some fun experiences, but
So how do you even get booked for something like that?
well, you have to have at least an hour of material, and you got to
Okay.
be clean. But I mean, it's really experience. Over time, the more you're out there and doing comedy, some of these leads will come in, whether it's from a website or there's a lot of third-party websites out there that are just where you can set up a profile, and it's corporate event planners looking for entertainment. There's agencies. Like I just today got an email from a talent company that specializes in corporate comedy, asking, basically wanting to put me on their roster. And I was like, oh, this is, because at first I was like, how did I get on this email list? I don't remember this company. And so I replied back to them because they wanted me to fill out this consent form. And I was like, is this something I signed up for? Like, I was confused. So I emailed them and I was like, hey, who are you? What is this? I don't remember signing up for this. And like, oh, you didn't. I was like, I realize you're an entertainment talent agency, but why are you emailing me this? What's going on here? And then they explained it. So I still haven't went through all the details of that, but
Gotcha.
But yeah, so there's talent, there's bookers that just specialize in corporate comedy. There's third-party websites, where you can do that kind of stuff. So there's lots of resources out there for doing it. But before you can even think about it, you need to be able to work.
Yeah.
Well, you got to have an hour, but you also have to be, a lot of those situations, you got to be clean, like super clean. Not just like TV clean. You have to be like, you got to watch, you can't really be doing like shot comedy or like, sometimes got to be careful on like, racial material if you do that kind of thing. Because with corporate events, depending on the event, you're being hired. Usually their corporate planner, event planner is probably just a HR person. And so they got to make sure whoever they hire isn't going to offend anybody in the company that then they could get backlash from. So
I see.
it's like they got to be safe, essentially. So
That's a weird form of comedy. That is.
oh, it definitely can be. I mean, a lot of times it pays pretty good, but
Nice.
it's definitely a form of comedy where people do it for the paycheck.
Gotcha.
I don't know too many, and I'm sure there are. I'm not saying there aren't, but I don't know too many comics that's what they love doing it because they have a good time performing corporate comedy.
Gotcha.
They love doing it because it pays well, and they don't have to do as many gigs. If you could do corporates on a regular basis, you could probably do 2 or 3 corporates a month, and that's all the comedy you'd have to do. And
Dang.
you'd be able to pay bills and stuff, if you're good at it.
That's fair.
But yeah, so it's definitely interesting, and it's one thing I always, with newer comics, I'm like, don't rush, just worry about getting funny, getting better at the craft, and that's all stuff that comes with the journey. Like eventually you'll get to that point where doing corporate comedy might be an option, or it might not be because
The style of comedy.
yeah, because
Yeah.
it might not align with what you want to do.
That's fair.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there are some corporate opportunities for a lot of bigger comedians too, because they have that celeb status, and they don't have to go into a corporate gig and necessarily abide by all the rules someone at my level would have to, because they're being hired because they're that person.
Gotcha.
Like whoever hired or is hiring them already knows their style of comedy, and they're
That's
being
fair.
hired because they're a celebrity. and so they could go in and pretty much do, whatever they want. I'm sure there's some limitations or whatever in contracts, but for the most part, they're getting hired for who they are, and they can get away with things that I wouldn't be able to.
Gotcha.
At the level that I'm at. And, like I said, there's no rush. Just get better at comedy. That's what, just have fun doing it and get better.
And actually, that's something that, because I took a month off of stand-up to try to get this sketch thing together. And, this is a martial art.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You need to do it
yeah.
every single week, or else you're going to get worse.
You got to keep the tools sharp, as I would say. Yeah.
So like, I can go back next month. I'll be perfectly fine. Oh, I don't know how to hold a mic again. Dang.
So I'm curious, going back to your story with the kid, what did you feel like you got intimidated and that was part of it, or you said you were dirty. What do you think? Do you think you just weren't confident in your material, and that's why, like you said, that Joe went up and was dirty and did fine? Do you think it's because he was more confident in the material and you were kind of hesitant?
Yeah, it was. Like I said, it was the first time I ever had kids in the audience, and so it had to be that. I can't think of anything else. And also, I was just like, this is the first year where I'm actually getting booked, being in a scene, which, by the way, Fort Collins is an awesome scene to be in.
Mm-hmm.
And just, I don't know, I just probably wasn't really ready for that booking. But
that's usually a good indicator of a bombing story. Wasn't ready.
Yeah.
We've talked about that on here. Me and my co-host, we talk about the top stories that lead to a bombing, and that's like in the top 3. Not ready for the spot. But that's also how you get that experience. So now you know better next time. What do you think these two experiences? What did you learn from them? What do you think you gained?
What I learned from the open mic bombing is you got to practice. You can't just say, hey, I want to do comedy. You have to actually put in the work. And so that was a big eye-opener. And then COVID happened, so I didn't have a chance to put in the work. And then the venue show was just, okay, now that you have jokes, you got to memorize them. And then I memorized them, and I was like, oh, I have to say these differently. You can't say them the same way each time. So I have to unmemorize them, but still memorize. No, it's just
change up kind of the way you tell the joke and stuff. What about, like, with the open mic experience you were talking about, you froze up because you were kind of out of your comfort zone because they didn't have the things you were used to. How did you overcome that this go around? Like, what did you do differently to think, okay, so every time I perform, it's not going to be the same scenario. I need to, adjust for that.
I think it just came with just doing it more, going to more venues, going to more different types of shows.
Getting the experience.
And also, that's one of the first things David taught us in the class were the etiquette of comedy. Move the microphone. You're not going to be ready. Don't have a safety blanket, aka a notebook. Like, you just do your thing.
Mm-hmm. No, that's great advice. That should be like the first lesson of comedy. Move the microphone.
It's such a simple one once you learn.
It is.
Because now when I'm at an open mic and I see a new guy not moving, I'm like, no.
Right? Yep. I'm the same. Anytime I see somebody not move the mic, I'm just like, oh no. And then I think the second thing that should be taught is how to hold a microphone.
Oh, for sure.
It's amazing because there's a lot of technical things in comedy that if you don't take, hopefully if you're taking a class, you'll learn some of that stuff with it, aside from just the, joke writing and building a set. But if you don't take a class, there's no, because nobody's telling people that. I mean, hopefully somebody's nice enough to say something, just to, so that way people know. I think I said something to you about the way you held the mic too, because you've done my open mic a couple times, and it can be pretty rowdy in there sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's, it's just a pizza pub. So, not everybody's there for comedy.
And the funny thing is, I watched one of the episodes, and it was like a week after, or a little after we did the show, and you brought up, and I was like, hey, you're talking about me. Oh, you're talking about me.
But not in a bad way. It's because that's how we get better from learning that. And there's a lot of, because I don't know if it's just the way we are, if we're vindictive or whatever, but there's a lot of comics that won't say anything because they don't want to help other comics. They're just like,
Oh yeah.
Let them learn the hard way. Let them keep bombing, and and it's like, or we could just be nice and tell them this thing, give them this tip, so that they can take that and get better.
And you shouldn't really know that all microphones are different.
They are. Yeah.
And it's something you need to learn right away. You need to. I don't know. It's just.
Oh, there's a lot of like technical things that go into it. That's for sure. Yeah, and that's a good point that you bring up about the microphone too, because there are a lot of different microphones, and some pick up better than others.
You have to hold them differently sometimes.
Yep. You gotta, and then there's a difference between corded and cordless, and cordless mics are always a pain, and you got to be careful. Not only do you have to be careful on how you hold it, so you're getting picked up, the distance between the mic and your mouth, but you also got to be careful that you're not covering the receiver with your hand, because then that a lot of times a lot of comedians like to hold the mic, like from the bottom, like where the cable is, and they'll do the same thing on a cordless, and they're holding it like this, and they're holding the receiver or the transmitter, and so that blocks the signal sometimes, and that's why sometimes when they're talking, the mic will cut in and out.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I've not used a cordless microphone that wasn't in my garage, so now I'm not going to hold it down there.
Yeah. I mean, with a cordless mic, you got to hold it on the actual handle. Otherwise, you could cause... I mean, there's already a good chance, because a lot of times, at least my experience has been, the cordless mics, the receiver and transmit, the transmitter is on the mic, I think, and the receiver is, hooked up to the PA. The distance usually isn't set right to where, they're not made for long distance. So, like, the stage will be too far from the receiver, and so then it's that you lose that signal. It'll break in and up, or you have to stand, like, in one particular area to make sure you don't lose that signal. Yeah, there's a lot with those. That's why a lot of comics don't like them. And it's easy to forget because you also have to check the batteries in those. And
there's a power button most likely on the on the mic.
Power button, mute button, and you got to check the batteries. Those are all things that are, especially because a lot of times those get overlooked, because usually when you're using a cordless mic, it's because you're doing an event that's not a typical comedy show. Because typical comedy shows, people know. We want a corded mic and one without a switch and a mute button and all the things.
And one thing going into the comedy was just you have to really understand sound and engineering, and can't be too close to this with the mic to the speaker. And there's all these things that I just didn't even. Maybe it's common sense to some people, but me, I'm a dunce. I didn't get any of that.
No, I don't think that's common sense to people. I mean, you're right. You do have to kind of pick up on some of that. Sound engineer, etiquette, I guess, for lack of better words, because I didn't know that stuff until I started doing comedy. I would have never, why would I? Unless you're a musician, and then you would probably learn that, but otherwise, or some kind of other live performance, that's not something that I think everybody knows. If they did, I guess I'm a dunce too, because I didn't know it either. Not till I started doing comedy.
Just a couple of dunces speaking into a microphone.
That's right. Couple of dunces. That's a great name of a podcast. Just a couple of dunces.
Gotta make a call real quick.
Gotta get that copyright. Get the trademark down. Get the patent, all that stuff. Now, when you do your sets, are you taping your sets? Are you watching back, listening back to recordings, or what do you try to take from your sets and your experience and apply it so those things don't happen again?
Luckily, I've been very fortunate with having just at least a couple friends that will come with me just to record my set real quick. But maybe
are you paying them?
No, they just.
Yeah, I got some good friends, man.
I buy them a beer afterwards.
Okay,
but
well, that's still. I'm like. That's where I'm at. I'm like, why can't I want somebody to follow me around and film me and then do all the editing so I don't have to?
They also want to get into stand-up too, so it's like, come see me bomb, then maybe you'll bomb.
Or maybe you'll be deterred and not want to do it.
I just got a text message. I lost all my friends.
Well, welcome to comedy. You're not a true comedian until you've lost all your normal friends. So
Actually, the funny thing about you just saying that is it brings me back to the bomb story. Right after I got off stage at the brewery mic, Joe came up to me. He's like, "Welcome to comedy." Just saw me defeated, almost crying. It was just so funny.
you're officially a comedian. Not quite. You're almost there. Like I said, you got to lose all your regular friends. Then you'll be a comedian. When you lose all those friends. Now, I want to talk about because you already said you were writing before you got into stand-up. You were already kind of writing. Were you writing comedy or just writing in general? Writing comedy?
Yeah.
So what's your writing process like? Do you sit down and write, or are you more free with it?
Yeah, I have to sit down and write.
Mm-hmm.
I have to really think about it and do the little word puzzles and come up with it. What I've noticed is, like, I'll come up with just different tags when I'm doing these mics, and then I'll write them down, and then I'll think of like an overall arching topic I can put all these little tags in and create a giant chunk out of them. Mm-hmm. And that's how I got my Mexican chunk, because those were all just individual jokes that I put together, and it worked out as one big one.
Nice.
And that's just how I like to write it. Mm-hmm. I like to view it like a puzzle piece.
Yeah, that's how I describe writing, like joke writing. Really, it's like you're taking all these pieces and trying to put them together. Because you might write something and it just doesn't work, and then you put it off to the side, and then a couple months down the road you write something else and realize, oh, if I do this with this other thing I wrote earlier, now I have a solid joke, and then leads into bit. So putting all those pieces together.
And when I started writing, the guy that's doesn't want to be on camera or anything, we started out writing together. And he wrote, my first set was probably 75% his material.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
And how'd that go?
Terrible.
Terrible.
Do not.
Because it wasn't funny, or just because he couldn't write in your voice?
Both. We were 18-year-olds at the time, so we weren't really...
Oh, yeah. No, not a lot of life experience.
And then comedy is just so different than, like, especially if you come right out of high school, it's nothing like that writing. It is a different beast.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's a different form of creative writing for sure. It's funny. I wanted to be a writer. That's what I aspired to be when I was in high school, or even in middle school. Like, that's all I wanted to do was write, and I wrote a lot of short stories and poetry and stuff like that. And comedy was something I never really tried to do, or necessarily aspire to do comedy writing. I mean, I kind of wanted to, because like I said, I was a big fan of sketch, but then you start doing stand-up, and it's like, that's not, like I said, it's just a different type of writing. It's not you're not, I mean, you are in some ways. There's similarities, but there's definitely a lot of differences, because you're not building plot per se. You're not building character development and things like that. I mean, there's a little bit of that in comedy writing, but not necessarily stand-up.
Oh yeah, definitely not.
Yeah,
especially since it's your own unless you're writing a sketch about your life, it's totally different.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of it's formatting is what makes it different, because with stand-up, the typical format is setup, punch, tag, and when you're writing, a short story, it's or whatever, or a poem or whatever, there's a format for that, or even a script. There's a different format for writing scripts and
sure,
everything. So, and when you have that formatting, I think it adds a different element, because there's a different way of thinking about how you're going to write it and present it. Or it could just be a dunce, not knowing somebody watching right now is probably like, this guy's an idiot. And you would not be wrong. That's what I have to say about that.
That's right. Just two dunces recording a podcast.
Exactly. Well, that's most podcasts, so there we go. We're doing things right. we're doing things right, so that's always good. But going back to your writing process, so you sit down and write things out. And when you started writing, the sketch and stuff, were you wanting to do stand up eventually, or was it?
So I did start out with stand up.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. You did say that. Yeah.
And my writing process has changed so much from just because I've actually done a little bit of growing up, and actually got to experience what the real world really means. And now what I like to do is I like to write something, and then now that I have that stage in my house and a mic, I'll just go on my stage and say it to nobody.
And
But it's
that's
still-
great.
still-
That's a good way to practice. I had a friend that used to do that. He built a stage, and he had a stage, and he would have like workshop mics at his garage sometimes, because that's all he did it for. Just for workshopping, but he would go out there and practice his material on the stage by himself, or we'd do these workshops where basically just a handful of comedians. Everybody would go up, do their bits, and then we'd give each other feedback. And
See, I would love to do something like that.
yeah. No, and that's a great. I mean, if you have those tools, you can definitely do that.
I just need to stop spending so much time. Like, obviously, you have to spend so much time on comedy, but it's getting to the point where I don't really have a personal life anymore.
Oh yeah, you can definitely take breaks. It's very important. I think it's easy to get in the mindset of, oh, I got to be doing comedy every night, or I'm not a comedian, and I got to just make this my whole identity. And yes, you do need to, get up as much as you can, but you also have to take breaks. I mean, I think about it, it's just like any day job. I mean, that's why there's breaks in day jobs, because if they didn't, you'd get burnt out. And
for sure.
Nobody would work at a job. Same thing with comedy. It becomes a job, so you have to take them breaks. And with comedy, I think it's important to take those breaks, because that's how you can get, ideas for other material. If you're living other, having other experiences, you can take those and turn them into jokes and material that you can use. So it's important to take those breaks. Well, we're gonna start wrapping up here. This has been great. I got a couple more things that we're going to talk about. I said, we talk about bombing, so I like to go out more positive. So what's been, one of your favorite gigs that you've done so far?
Comedy Works was awesome. Obviously, like new talent night, great. It was just to go to that level of stage when I've just been in the scene with breweries, and obviously the Comedy Fort's awesome.
Yeah.
But it's just going to Comedy Work. I don't know, it's just something different. It's just a different feeling, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think a lot of people in the scene, Denver, Fort Collins, Northern Colorado, would agree with that. But they would know, they would get what you're saying for sure.
But my favorite one so far has to be those garage shows. They're just so much fun because at first I thought it was gonna be terrible. I didn't think it was gonna be good. Like, I've had other comics say, it's probably not the best idea, and then they did it. And they crushed, and the whole room was laughing, and it was just awesome. It was like, oh, I did that.
Yeah, that's
We all
awesome.
did
That's a great feeling. And I assume you had people show up to be in the audience and things like that which makes it a good show.
Luckily, every single time I've done this, and especially this one, have been a different audience. Obviously, my sister and my mom and my brother-in-law, they've all been to all the shows, but every single one, there's been different audience members.
That's awesome. That's great. That's a good sign. Hopefully that train of luck keeps going.
Hopefully.
Hopefully it doesn't run out anytime soon. And then we have the Art of Bombing playlist. It's the Art of Bombing Get Pumped. It doesn't have to be a song that gets you pumped for comedy, but just a song that gets you pumped.
What me and my sketch crew play right before we get to work is Let's Get It Started by the Black Eyed Peas. And that's the one I would pick.
Okay, that's the one you picked. That might already be on there, but...
Oh, then...
give me one more just in case, because I think that one is on there.
Any Kenny Chesney song.
Any Kenny Chesney song. All right.
I just really like Kenny Chesney.
Oh, really? I would not have pegged you for that. I would not have saw that coming. I love it. All right. Any Kenny Chesney song. Got it. Sweet. Well, this has been fantastic. Where can people find you? Where can people find your sketch group and all that information? Plug all your stuff.
I'm Aneas Herrera on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. And then the sketch group is the Comedy Crew Podcast. Comedy Crew Productions. And you just can, just on YouTube. Just basically that.
Perfect. Well, this has been great. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you, Dan.
This has been a Dan Bublitz comedy production.